Well now, my dear brainwashed friends, sit back comfortably and prepare yourselves for a session of painful truth. Today we're going to dissect one of the most beautiful fairy tales of American propaganda, the story of the tragic assassination of President Kennedy by a lone psychopath. On November 22, 1963, in Dallas, what occurred was not a murder, it was an execution. A public, demonstrative execution of a president who dared to challenge the real masters of America. And while you've spent the last 60 years being charmed by tales of the Kennedy curse and romanticizing Camelot, the real killers live peacefully in their mansions and continue to control your pathetic lives. Lee Harvey Oswald? Seriously? This loser couldn't even hit a target at a shooting range, and suddenly he became a sniper at Call of Duty level. 3 shots? 1 magic bullet that changed directions 7 times? This is a circus. But you bought it, didn't you? Because it's more convenient. Believing in fairy tales rather than admitting you live in a country where the deep state executes inconvenient presidents in broad daylight. Ready to learn who really rules America? Then buckle up. This is going to hurt.
Chapter 1. How one idealist decided to play with sharks. Oh, what a naive boy came to the White House in 1961. Johnny Kennedy, the golden boy from a clan of millionaires, seriously believed that the president was the one who runs the country. The poor thing didn't even suspect he was just a pretty puppet for the public, while the real puppeteers pulled the strings from the shadows. But this pretty boy turned out to be too stubborn. He wanted peace with the Russians. What a nightmare for those who profit from the Cold War. He decided to end the slaughter in Vietnam. But what about the billions in profits for military contractors? And most terrifying of all, he dared to threaten the Holy of Holies, the monetary system of private bankers. NSAM 263. Remember these numbers, sheep. This is the death sentence that Kennedy signed for himself on October 11, 1963. Withdrawal of troops from Vietnam? Seriously, Johnny? And who's going to buy the napalm, bombs, and coffins? The poor idealist didn't even realize he had declared war on a machine that devours presidents for breakfast. Lockheed, General Dynamics, that whole gang of military sharks, they weren't about to lose their trillions because of some boy with noble ideas. Naivety is so sweet and so deadly dangerous.
Chapter 2. When the boy president crossed the planet's most dangerous psychopaths. Now, my dear zombies, let's talk about how our cherubic Johnny managed to simultaneously enrage the CIA and push the world to the brink of nuclear apocalypse. Bravo, Kennedy. History had never seen such suicidal audacity. Bay of Pigs, 1961. The CIA orchestrated an invasion of Cuba without even bothering to ask the president, may we? These guys were used to doing whatever they wanted, toppling governments, assassinating undesirables, staging coups. And here comes some puppy in the Oval Office daring to tell them what to do. Kennedy refused to back their bloody adventure with air support. The result? 1,400 Cuban mercenaries captured. The CIA was livid. Allen Dulles, that gentleman killer in an Armani suit, swore revenge on the insolent kid. "I'll splinter the CIA into 1,000 pieces," declared brave Johnny. Oh, sweet, naive child. Do you not realize these people eliminate entire countries? And you thought the US president was untouchable? Then came the Cuban Missile Crisis. The generals demanded bombing Cuba, starting a nuclear war, but our pacifist decided to negotiate with the Russians, secretly, bypassing the military. Can you imagine the faces of those war hawks? They were preparing the most profitable war in history, and this traitor president was ruining their plans with his peace on earth nonsense. Signing his own death warrant turned out to be easier than Johnny thought.
Chapter 3. How an idealist boy decided to take toys from the greediest monsters in the universe. And now, my dear financially illiterate hamsters, brace yourselves for the juiciest part of our tale. Because our hero, Johnny Kennedy, did something that bankers kill for without a second thought. He dared to mess with their money. On June 4th, 1963, this daredevil signed Executive Order 11110. Do you know what that meant? The government gained the right to print its own money without the Federal Reserve's permission. Can you imagine the horror in the eyes of the banking clans? Silver certificates worth $4 billion. That's what drove the Rothschild-Rockefeller mafia to a white-hot rage. Money backed by real silver, not air and IOUs. What a nightmare for the parasites who had been sucking the life out of the American economy for 50 years. Poor bankers. Their beautiful 1913 scheme, setting up a private shop called the Federal Reserve and forcing the government to borrow its own money at interest, was crumbling before their eyes. The Rothschilds, Morgans, Rockefellers, these tuxedoed gentlemen who financed both sides of every war for the last 200 years were suddenly under threat. Some kid from Boston decided to strip them of their monopoly on creating money out of thin air. Secrecy is repugnant to a free society, naive Johnny declared in 1961. Dear boy, you signed your own death warrant with your own hand. These people don't forgive even the slightest hint of challenging their power, and they made that crystal clear.
Chapter 4. Theater of the Absurd in Dallas, or How the Secret Services Staged a Circus for Idiots. All right, my dear lovers of official fairy tales, welcome to the most brazen spectacle of the 20th century. On November 23, 1963, Dallas hosted the premiere of the action blockbuster How to Kill a President and Pin It on a Nutcase. The script? Pure genius. Take a loser like Oswald, a former Marine with Marxist views. How convenient. Who happened to visit the USSR 3 years earlier. Coincidence? Of course. The Secret Services just love coincidences. The motorcade route was suddenly changed at the last minute. Instead of a straight road, a sharp turn right under the book depository's windows. Speed reduced to 11 miles an hour. Secret Service agents ordered to not run alongside the car. The limousine's roof removed. Such care for the president's safety brings tears to your eyes. Then the real show began. The magic bullet, CE-3N9. This ballistic masterpiece managed to pierce Kennedy, change direction midair, hit Governor Connolly, break his rib, shatter his wrist, and remain nearly pristine. The laws of physics are sobbing in the corner. 3 shots in 5.6 seconds from a prehistoric rifle? Was Oswald cheating in real life? Even FBI snipers couldn't replicate this feat during reconstructions. But the funniest part, how quickly they swept it all under the rug.
Chapter 5. Hiding the Tracks in 48 Hours. A masterclass from the pros. Now, my dear naive kiddies, the most thrilling part of the show. how real pros cover their tracks. Because killing a president is only half the job. The key is ensuring no one asks inconvenient questions. Exactly 48 hours after the shots, Jack Ruby spontaneously decides to avenge the beloved president. What an unexpected hero from the world of nightclubs with mafia ties, suddenly driven to shoot Oswald in a police station? Convenient, right? Dead men don't testify. But that's just the appetizer. The Warren Commission worked like clockwork. 888 pages of a report in record time. Conclusion pre-written. Lone gunman, no conspiracy, move along. And the witnesses? Oh, that's a whole saga. In the first 3 years after the assassination, 18 key witnesses died. Heart attacks, suicides, accidents, overdoses. The statistical odds of such coincidences? 1 in 100 trillion. But who cares about stats when you have an official version? Dorothy Kilgallen, the journalist who interviewed Ruby in jail and promised to blow the case wide open, found dead from a barbiturate overdose. Her interview notes vanished. Such a shame. David Feary, a CIA pilot with ties to New Orleans, died the day before testifying to DA Garrison. Brain aneurysm, you know, it happens. Professional work, what can I say? Chapter 6. Why the Truth is More Dangerous Than Radiation, a survival lesson for the curious. Now, my dear suicidal sleuths, let's talk about why 60 years after the assassination, CIA files are still classified. If Oswald acted alone, what's there to hide? Prison cafeteria borscht recipes? In 2017, Trump promised to declassify all documents. Guess what happened? Absolutely nothing. Even that self-obsessed narcissist who ignored every taboo suddenly whispered, "Well, there are nuances. Living people could be harmed." What living people after 60 years, Donald? Oswald would be 84. Are 90-year-old assassins still on the payroll? Tough old geezers. Every president promises to reveal the truth, and everyone gets a special briefing from men in suits. After that, they mysteriously lose interest in the topic. Bush Sr., former CIA director, even said, "Americans can't handle the truth." Such touching concern for our psyches. Here's the kicker. Russia declassified all its Kennedy files in the 90s. No bombshells, just confirmation that Oswald was a regular loser, not a Soviet agent. But US intelligence clings to its secrets like an alcoholic to his last bottle. And that, my dear sheep, tells us more than any documents. The truth is so explosive, they still fear it like fire.
Chapter 7. Family Chronicles of Killers. How clans have ruled America for 200 years. Now, my dear amateur conspiracists, let's flip through the family albums of America's real rulers. Because Kennedy's assassination wasn't a one-off psychopath's act. It was a classic cleanup by a family business. Prescott Bush, grandfather of a future president, funded Hitler through Union Banking Corporation. Documented fact. In 1942, his bank was even seized for trading with the enemy. But who cares? His grandson still became president. Here's a charming detail. Bush Sr. can't recall where he was on the day of Kennedy's assassination. The only person of his generation with amnesia. Everyone remembers that day, but the future CIA director? Total blank. Convenient, right? Allen Dulles, whom Kennedy fired as CIA director after the Bay of Pigs fiasco, led the commission investigating Kennedy's murder. That's like putting a fox in charge of the henhouse and wondering why the chickens disappear. The Rothschild family owned Reuters and Associated Press back in the 19th century. They always controlled information. And whoever controls information controls reality. Dulles, Bundy, Harriman. These names are intertwined like the roots of poisonous ivy. They created the CIA, the Federal Reserve, the Council on Foreign Relations. 3 generations of the same families rule the country through puppet presidents. And when someone tries to break free from their grip, they get a bullet in the head in Dallas. Democracy? Don't make my slippers laugh. Chapter 8. Operation Mockingbird. How to turn journalists into parrots. All right, my dear consumers of independent media, time to learn who really writes your favorite news. Because after Kennedy's assassination, it wasn't enough to cover tracks. They had to reformat an entire nation's brains. Operation Mockingbird, an officially declassified CIA program to control the media. Started in the 1950s, it blossomed after 1963. The idea? Why kill inconvenient journalists when you can just buy them? Katharine Graham at the Washington Post, an agent of influence. Henry Luce of Time magazine, in the CIA's pocket. Walter Cronkite, America's most trusted man, reading scripts written in Langley. 400 journalists on the CIA's payroll. This isn't conspiracy nonsense, it's official data from the 1975 Church Committee. But who cares? The sheep keep believing in a free press. Here's the juicy bit. Anyone who questions the official Kennedy assassination story is instantly labeled a conspiracy theorist. That term? Invented by the CIA in 1967. Document CIA 1035-960, an instruction manual for discrediting Warren Commission critics. Genius, right? Create the conspiracy theorist label and slap it on anyone asking inconvenient questions. Say the magic word and any argument becomes paranoid gibberish. Pavlovian reflex in action. Hear conspiracy theory? Shut off your brain. Thinking is bad for your health. Thanks for sticking with us. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss new episodes. Share this video to spread the truth. Until next time.